Hello everybody and welcome to the Makerspace at Camrose Public Library. This little video craft tutorial, we're going to be making something pretty super cute based on Studio Ghibli characters. It's part of Central Alberta Fanfest in partnership with Ponoka Jubilee Library, Sylvan Lake Municipal Library, Mary C. Moore Public Library, and Blackfalds Public Library. So we hope you check out what other libraries are doing to celebrate this epic week of geek. So for today, we are going to be making some little Susuwatari. I just said that wrong. I call them soot sprites because I am a fan of the dubs. I'm not so great with the subs. So we in our family absolutely love My Neighbor Totoro and Spirited Away. So soot sprites, as you can see, are one of my favorites. So for this project, you're going to need some black yarn. You're going to need some scrap cardboard, not a giant piece. You don't need a lot of cardboard. A box cutter and a cutting mat or an extra piece of cardboard to cut on so you don't destroy your table. If you have it, one of these handy dandy paper cutters is lovely, but if not, something with a really good straight edge and a pencil. You're going to need an empty jar. You're going to need something circular to trace with and something to write with, to trace with. And you're gonna need some colorful papers as well. If you don't have colored paper at home, you can paint your own paper or color it with markers or crayons would probably be best because you could get an overall even coat of color. So we're gonna start with the soot sprite first. So basically it's just a little pom-pom with googly eyes or paper eyeballs that you've glued on if you don't have googly eyes at home. So we need to cut some circles out of our paper. So when you're making pom-poms, your pom-pom is gonna end up being about the same distance around as whatever you use for your base of it. So I'm gonna make a smaller one because I made a giant one already. So on your cardboard, tipping you guys down, because this is high-tech videography, don't you know? And you're gonna trace some circles. You need 2 circles of the same diameter. And then you can either use a good pair of scissors or your box cutters to cut these out. I find it easier to remove them from the giant piece of cardboard first, because otherwise you're swinging an entire box around just trying to cut out a little circle. So 2 circles. So how big your soot sprites are going to be out will also decide how much yarn you need. If you just have a little bit of yarn at home, just make tiny little soot sprites, because really they're teeny tiny little fuzzy creatures anyways. So we've got our 2 circles, and we need 1 more piece of cardboard here, and we need a rectangle. So I'm just going to cut off a portion of my box and trim it down from there. Doesn't have to be perfectly rectangular. So we want our rectangle of our box to be, I would say, just a few centimeters wider on each side than our circle is. So I'm going to go ahead and trace a line. And we want it to be a bit longer just so that we have something to hold on to. I'm actually going to make mine a bit shorter than that. And while you have your circle there, you want to trace around your circle on there as well. So what we're doing right now is we are making the base for wrapping our yarn to make our pom-pom. So set your circles aside. And see what I've got there? So now we can go ahead and cut that out. So a circle closer to the end of one side and on the other side. So now we need to mark the middle of our circle. I just do that by poking a dot through it. And now we need to create a thin little section cut out from the middle here. And it doesn't need to be super wide, just wide enough to slip a piece of yarn through, basically is all you need. So I'll make my cuts and I'll show you after I've done what I've done. Just like that, and then you can bend that up and you want to snip that piece off so that it's right at the middle of your circle. And that is going to be our form for making our pom-pom. So the first step to making the pom-pom is you want to get a length of yarn. It doesn't have to be super long. And we are going to slip it in between our form and just lightly tie it off because you want to be able to untie it afterwards, but you don't want it to fall out. This is what we're going to use to secure the pom-pom once it's done. And now, all we need to do with our yarn is start wrapping around the middle of your circle. I find it easier to just throw my ball of yarn on the floor and then it will unwind faster. So I would say about 100 to 150 times completely around, all the way around. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. I'm going to pause and fast forward this. 145, 146, 147, 148, 149, 150. So there we have it. That's what it'll look like when you've done winding it around. It's okay if it collapses a little bit here. So now you can trim off your ends. And we are going to unknot this knot that we made at the top. And we're going to use that to secure our pom-pom before cutting the ends. So open it up and feed it back through the slit that you've made, wrapping it around. And this is very important. You want to pull it super tight because we don't want loosey-goosey pom-poms or they will just fall apart. So pull it as tight as you can without breaking your yarn and tie it off in a knot. And then you can trim those ends off as well. There, just like that. I'm going to tip you guys back up now. So now to finish your pom-pom, you just take your scissors, slip it inside all of that yarn that you've wound, which sometimes can be easier said than done because my pom-pom is really super tight. Slip it in and then just sort of saw through the ends. Puff. And do the same thing on the other side. And then you can remove your cardboard and you'll have a lovely little pom-pom. There are other ways of making pom-poms, but this is the way that I found the easiest. There's the donut method, which can be really tricky. And you can slide him out. And if you need to, if you feel like it's loosening up, you can slip another piece. Slip it halfway down. Oh, I didn't get him cut all the way through. My guy kind of feels pretty loosey-goosey, so I'm going to tie him off again with another strand of yarn, poking it through the form before I completely remove him. That was not the piece of yarn I wanted. This is the piece of yarn I want, right here. So you tuck it through, wrap it around again because, wow, yeah, he's going to fall completely apart. And then I'll have to re-record this entire video, and I do not want to do that. Really tight. There we go. That's feeling better. I don't think he's going to fall apart now. Perfect. Now we can slip him off and he will stay all together in a beautiful little pom-pom. So you can trim off your extra ends. And what these extra circles that we made were for is if you want to even him out. You can use them as a form to trim around. But I think soot sprites look adorable when they're messy and fuzzy and just kind of all over the place. Like he does look like he's got a mohawk or something, so you could just trim around until he's all even. You don't have to use the forms. You can just eyeball it. This makes a lovely fluffy mess, so maybe do it over hard flooring and not your carpet, or you will end up vacuuming. So there we go. Now we just need to add eyeballs to our little soot sprites. And to do that, like I said, you can either use googly eyes, which I used for this little guy, or you can just cut some circles out of white paper. I'm going to make tiny eyes for this guy. I found the best way to make a good circle, just hand cutting, is to slowly like circle it down until you get the size that you want. And then you can use a marker or a black felt pen. I just have a blue marker, but you can use a black one to make the insides of the little eyes. And then using some tacky glue or hot glue, or even like scrapbooking glue dots will work. Just glue their little eyeballs on wherever you feel like their little soot spritty eyes should be. And there you go, you've got a little soot sprite. So, care and feeding of your soot sprite. You really need to feed them well, and what soot sprites love to eat are Konpeito, which is a little tiny star-shaped Japanese sugar candy. So we're gonna make some Konpeito. So what you need for this is a paper cutter and some paper, colorful papers, like I said, or you can paint them. You can hand cut them, but you wanna make sure your lines are pretty straight, because when it comes to folding them, you want the lines really straight. So I cut mine to be about 1/4 of an inch wide, and you want to use the whole length of the sheet for each one. And you can do, if you have a paper cutter, you can do more than one at a time. So the wider your strips of paper are, the bigger your Konpeito will be, which might be good if you're having really tiny soot sprites. Because really, if you watch the movie, you can see on my shirt, soot sprites are bigger than the candies. So now, this is the part that's going to take you guys, it's a bit of a learning curve to make them, but once you learn how, they're really easy to make. They just take time and patience, so I would suggest cutting all of your papers ahead of time. I think I did one full sheet of 4 or 5 different colors of paper. I was just looking at my bowl of ones that I already made. And cut them all, and then sit down with your favorite Ghibli movie on and just craft away. So to start, one strip of paper, we are going to make, it looks like a little ribbon. So once you've gotten to the ribbon part, you want to make it into a knot. So you put that tail at the back side of the ribbon through your hoop and gently, gently wiggle it until you have just a tiny bit of overhang at the end. Now, when you're folding paper, it's almost instinct to want to make creases, but we don't want to make creases in these, so it's okay if they stay bubbled up like that. So we're going to take our short tail and we're going to fold it over. You can see right there, it kind of naturally wants to go there. If it's a little bit too long and it seems like it's going to hang over the edge, you can trim it with a pair of scissors. I'm going to trim mine a little bit. So it's fine for that end to be dangly, as long as it doesn't go past what's going to be the other edge of the star. So now this is where we start wrapping it. So you take your long edge and you want to fold it over where that one side is, and it will naturally fall to where it's supposed to go. And you just keep doing that over and over again, following the lines that you made with that original knot. Over, making sure that your sides line up, and over, and over. I'm going to turn it around so that you can see how it's meeting up with the edges. And it will kind of just naturally follow the lines that you want it to. Sometimes you have to wiggle it a little bit to make these edges line up properly. Over. And then to finish it off, if there's that much of an overhang, that's a little bit too much, so you want to trim it back a little bit. But leave yourself enough, because how you finish these, you don't need any glue or anything, is you just slip that little tab A into slot B. So I'll show you the folding part again. We will do a pink one this time. So you want to make your little ribbon hoop. Wow, my hands aren't doing what I'm telling them to do. There will be days like that. So make something that looks like a little ribbon. And then you want to make a knot, getting it as close to one end of your paper as possible. Again, try not to crease your paper too hard, because we need that air in between so that we can make them puff up. And then you fold your little tab over. That one looks like it will be fine, so I'm not going to need to trim it. And then starting with the long edge, just follow the sides, wrapping the paper around so that each bend you make lays flush with one of the sides. I've done a few of these. I hope I'm not going too fast for you. And like I said, it's just time and patience. Put on a movie, grab a beverage and your family and make them fold with you. It's a good family activity. And just keep rolling it until you get to almost the end of your paper. And then you tuck that edge in. See, this one I did perfectly. I don't need to trim anything off of this one. And you tuck it in to the little flap there. And you do that until you have millions and millions of these flat little stars. So what we're actually looking for, though, we're going to turn these flat little stars into puffy little stars. So this part can be a little bit tricky because you need to pinch them in the right way. I'm lucky, I have fingernails. If you don't have fingernails, this might be even more tricky. So starting with just one side, it doesn't matter what side, you need to pinch it in, push in and pinch your fingers towards each other. And that's what's going to make the little star shape. And then you just work your way around, pinching in all the way around. And it will puff up. This is why we don't want really firm creases, really hard creases, because you need that little cushion inside the folded paper to be able to push them in and make the stars. So they don't seem to take very long to make, but when you have to make as many as you need for this project, it will take a while. So do it over a couple of days. I have a whole bunch of Konpeito already made up. And so now to finish your project, super simple, open up a jar. If you have a giant jar, you're going to want to make bigger soot sprites, maybe even bigger Konpeito, and drop a few in. My jar is pretty small, so I got away with making fewer. And you throw your soot sprite in. Maybe I'll put 2 in. So you want their eyes facing out of the jar. And actually, no, just 1. I'm just putting 1. If I had a bigger jar, I'd put both in. And then you can fill it up with Konpeito. Tuck some around so it looks like your little soot sprite has somehow broken into your jar of candies. There you go. Oh, put a lid on so they can't escape. And throw it up on a shelf and enjoy your shelf of awesome. Thank you guys for joining me. I hope you guys really enjoy everything else that's going on with Central Alberta Fan Fest, and we'll see you next time.